Imagine you owned 100 toilets, not bathrooms in a building, not luxury hotel rooms. Just those plastic portable toilets you see outside construction sites, festivals, weddings, and outdoor events. At first, it sounds almost ridiculous. How could something that looks like a few $100s of plastic possibly become a serious business? But here's the strange part. The portable toilet business isn't really about toilets. It is about recurring demand, logistics, waste management, and owning an asset that keeps getting rented over and over again. A construction company doesn't want to buy a permanent bathroom every time it starts a new project. An event organizer doesn't want to build plumbing for a 3-day festival. So they rent a solution, and that creates a business where the same physical toilet can generate revenue repeatedly. But there is a catch. The money isn't made simply by dropping a toilet at someone's property. Someone has to deliver it. Someone has to clean it. Someone has to pump it. Someone has to transport the waste. Someone has to dispose of that waste legally. And if the toilet is sitting 40 miles away from your service yard, the plastic box might be earning money while your truck is quietly destroying your profit. So the real question is not, how much can you charge for a portable toilet? The real question is, how much money can you keep after servicing something that people fill with waste every day? Let's follow the money. A portable sanitation company usually has several ways to make money. The most obvious is the rental itself. A customer pays for the right to have a unit on their site for a certain period. In the US, published 2026 pricing guides show standard portable toilets commonly renting for roughly $75 to $200 or more per week, depending on location, service level, and rental arrangement. Other published market data puts standard monthly rentals in ranges around $150 to $400. Prices vary substantially by market, and these numbers should be treated as benchmarks rather than universal prices. Rental hawk. Then there are additional revenue streams: delivery, pickup, extra cleaning, additional pumping, hand washing stations, ADA accessible units, deluxe units, and eventually, higher-end restroom trailers. That matters because the cheapest portable toilet isn't necessarily the most profitable product. A standard unit might generate recurring rental income. A premium restroom trailer can generate dramatically more revenue per booking, but it also brings higher acquisition costs, maintenance, transportation, cleaning, and operational complexity. So the business has a ladder. Start with basic sanitation, then increase the value of each customer. And that brings us to the first major economic advantage: recurring revenue. Imagine, purely as an illustrative example, that you own 100 standard units. Suppose you average $125 per unit per month. That produces 100 times $125 equals $12,500 in monthly rental revenue, or $150,000 per year. And the toilets haven't been sold. You still own them. If they remain in usable condition, they can continue generating revenue next month and the month after that. This is why the industry can look deceptively attractive. You buy an asset once, then attempt to rent it repeatedly. But now the uncomfortable part begins. Those 100 toilets aren't really 100 revenue machines. They're 100 assets that have to be positioned, serviced, cleaned, maintained, transported, and eventually replaced. Let's say your 100 units generate that hypothetical $12,500 a month. The first mistake would be calling that profit. It's revenue, and revenue is only the beginning. Suppose you spend money on fuel, drivers, pumping, cleaning supplies, chemicals, repairs, insurance, yard costs, administration, vehicle maintenance, disposal, marketing, and equipment financing. Your actual economics depend heavily on how efficiently those costs are controlled. This is where route density becomes incredibly important. Imagine two businesses. Company A has 100 toilets concentrated around one metropolitan area. Company B also has 100 toilets, but they're scattered across a region. Both companies might have the same revenue, but they don't have the same economics. Company A can potentially service several customers during one efficient route. Company B may spend hours driving between locations. The toilets are identical. The customers might even pay identical prices. But the distance between customers changes the business. This is one of the hidden assets of portable sanitation. Not the toilet, the route. Think about what happens during a service visit. A truck arrives, The operator pumps out the waste tank. The unit gets cleaned. Chemicals are replenished. Supplies are restocked. The truck leaves. The waste has to go somewhere. That entire process costs money, and the costs can multiply quickly when utilization rises. A toilet sitting and used at a quiet construction site may require relatively little service. A toilet at a massive outdoor event can be a completely different machine. Hundreds or thousands of people may use the facilities within a short period. That means more waste, more cleaning, more supplies, potentially more pumping, and greater pressure on the equipment. So utilization has two sides. High utilization means more revenue, but excessive utilization can also increase service costs. The goal isn't simply to make every toilet as busy as possible. The goal is to make every toilet profitably utilized. Now imagine a construction company signs a 6-month contract. This is where the business gets especially interesting. The portable toilet becomes part of the construction company's operating infrastructure. Workers need access to sanitation. The project needs to comply with workplace requirements. And nobody wants to keep changing sanitation providers halfway through a project. That creates something incredibly valuable: customer retention. A one-day wedding booking gives you one transaction. A construction project can potentially give you months of recurring revenue. Then another project from the same contractor. Then another. So the best customer may not be the person willing to pay the highest price once. It could be the customer who keeps several units rented for years. This changes how you think about marketing. Instead of asking, "How many toilets can I rent this weekend?" a sophisticated operator asks, "How many recurring contracts can I build?" And construction isn't the only market. There are festivals, concerts, weddings, outdoor parties, government projects, road construction, emergency situations, industrial sites, agricultural operations, remote work camps, and temporary facilities. The demand exists because permanent plumbing isn't always practical. That is the underlying economic problem the industry solves. It isn't selling plastic. It is selling temporary sanitation infrastructure. And that distinction matters. Because once you understand what the customer is really buying, you can start increasing the value of the service. A customer doesn't necessarily care about owning a portable toilet. They care about not having a sanitation problem. That means reliability can become more valuable than the cheapest possible price. Now let's look at the cost of entering the business. This is another place where the industry becomes more complicated than it appears. You need units. You need a way to move them. You need a way to service them. And depending on the operating model and local regulations, you may need specialized waste handling equipment, permits, insurance, a suitable yard, and disposal arrangements. One recent industry startup estimate puts a basic U.S. operation using used equipment somewhere in the tens of thousands of dollars, while a more fully equipped operation can require substantially more. These are estimates, not universal startup requirements. Reservity. And there's an important strategic decision hidden here. Do you buy the vacuum truck immediately? Or outsource pumping? Do you buy 100 units? Or start with 20? Do you lease a large yard? Or operate from a smaller facility? Do you target construction or events? The answer changes the amount of capital you need. A small operator might begin with fewer units and outsource certain functions. A larger operator may build an integrated operation with its own service trucks, employees, yard, routing system, and waste disposal infrastructure. That can create economies of scale, but it also creates more things that can go wrong. Consider a hypothetical startup with 25 standard units. Suppose, purely for illustration, the owner spends $1,000 per unit. That's $25,000 in toilet inventory. Add transportation equipment, insurance, permits, storage, working capital, and other startup expenses. Suddenly, the business isn't a $25,000 investment. The toilets are only one part of the system, and that's an important lesson. The equipment you see isn't the entire business. The invisible infrastructure matters just as much. Now imagine that those 25 units are rented at an illustrative average of $125 per month. That's 25 times $125 equals $3,125 monthly revenue. But if the owner has to make inefficient service trips, pay employees, maintain vehicles, pay disposal costs, cover insurance, and handle empty periods between rentals, the actual profit could be dramatically lower. Now compare that with 250 units concentrated around the same service area. At the same illustrative $125 monthly rental. 250 times $125 equals $31,250 per month. That's $375,000 in annual rental revenue before expenses. But the costs don't necessarily increase in perfect proportion. One office can manage more customers. One yard can hold more units. A service truck can potentially handle multiple stops on the same route. Administrative systems can serve hundreds of units. This is where scale can start working. But there is another trap. More units only help if you can keep them rented. A toilet sitting in a storage yard generates zero rental revenue. And zero revenue doesn't mean zero cost. You still bought it. You still have capital tied up. It still occupies space, and eventually it needs maintenance. So the goal isn't to own the most toilets. The goal is to own the right number of toilets for the demand you can actually capture. This also explains why location matters so much. Portable sanitation is a logistics business disguised as a rental business. If your customers are close together, each service route can potentially produce more revenue per mile traveled. If your customers are scattered, transportation consumes more of the economics. And in places with heavy traffic, poor roads, expensive fuel, or long distances between service locations, the problem becomes even more serious. For example, an analysis of Nigeria's construction site toilet market highlights logistics as a major challenge, including road conditions, traffic congestion in cities such as Lagos, fuel consumption, vehicle wear, and the difficulty of serving remote projects. Index box. That means the business model cannot simply be copied from one city to another. The economics are local, the price is local, the labor cost is local, the disposal infrastructure is local, the regulations are local, and most importantly, the distance between customers is local. There is also a fascinating difference between owning a portable toilet company and simply renting portable toilets. The rental company controls the customer relationship. It controls the equipment, and ideally, it controls the recurring service. That creates a much stronger economic position than simply selling the physical unit. Because a $1,000 asset sold once generates one transaction. A $1,000 asset rented repeatedly can potentially generate revenue for years. That is the power of utilization. But there is a second asset hiding underneath it, the customer contract. Imagine two companies each own 500 toilets. Company A has 500 units sitting in storage with random one-off customers. Company B has 500 units deployed under recurring contracts with construction companies, event operators, municipalities, and industrial customers. On paper, they own the same number of toilets. Economically, they are not the same business. Company B has something much more valuable, predictable demand. And this is where scaling becomes interesting. At 20 units, the owner might personally handle sales, scheduling, deliveries, and customer service. At 200 units, that becomes harder. At 1,000 units, the company needs systems, routing software, maintenance schedules, inventory tracking, driver management, customer billing, service verification, equipment records, disposal documentation, and trained employees. Growth doesn't simply mean buying more toilets. It means building an operating system capable of managing more toilets without allowing costs to grow faster than revenue. That is the difference between a small job and a scalable business. But there are risks. The first is demand. If construction slows down, some recurring contracts can disappear. The second is fuel and transportation. A business that relies heavily on trucks is exposed to vehicle operating costs. The third is equipment damage and maintenance. Portable units live in environments where they can be damaged, vandalized, or simply worn down. The fourth is regulation. You're handling human waste. That means sanitation and disposal rules aren't optional details. The fifth is labor. The work is unpleasant, physically demanding, and operationally important. If you cannot reliably staff the service operation, customers notice immediately, and that leads to perhaps the biggest risk of all, service failure. A customer can tolerate a slightly expensive toilet. They are much less likely to tolerate a toilet that isn't serviced when promised, because the product isn't really the plastic unit. The product is availability and sanitation. So what does the owner actually make? There's no universal answer. A portable toilet company can have significant revenue and still produce disappointing owner income if routes are inefficient, utilization is low, debt is high, or service costs are poorly controlled. But a well-run operation can benefit from recurring contracts, asset reuse, route density, and scale. Imagine an illustrative company producing $500,000 in annual revenue. If operating costs consume $450,000, the business has $50,000 left before considering the owner's personal taxes and other factors. Another company with the same $500,000 revenue might control its routes, labor, maintenance, and overhead well enough to leave $100,000. Same revenue, completely different economics. That's why revenue is one of the least useful numbers to look at by itself. The question is, how much stays? And that brings us to the real asset. It isn't the toilet is replaceable. The real asset is the system around the toilet. A dense customer base, recurring contracts, efficient routes, reliable drivers, proper waste disposal relationships, a recognizable local brand, a fleet that stays in service, and customers who call you again when the next construction project begins. That is what turns a collection of plastic units into a business. So, is the portable toilet business a good business? Potentially, but not because toilets are magical profit machines. It works when several conditions come together. There is enough demand. Customers are geographically concentrated. Units stay rented. Service routes are efficient. Equipment is maintained. Waste is handled properly. And the company generates enough recurring revenue to justify its infrastructure. The trap is looking at a portable toilet and seeing a cheap piece of plastic. The opportunity is looking at the same toilet and seeing an income-producing asset that can be rented repeatedly. But the real business is everything surrounding it. The truck, the route, the contract, the service, the customer, and the system. Because in portable sanitation, the money isn't in owning a toilet. The money is in keeping that toilet working, rented, serviced, and moving through the right network of customers. And once you understand that, the portable toilet doesn't look so ridiculous anymore. It starts to look like what it really is. A small asset sitting inside a surprisingly sophisticated logistics business. If you enjoyed breaking down businesses like this, subscribe, and we'll keep following the money behind the businesses most people never think twice about.